to Chaotic Riffs Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.chaoticriffs.com. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking with Jeremy Edge, the guitar player from both the Jeremy Edge project and Candlelight Red. How you doing today, Jeremy?
I'm doing great today.
And you're quite busy these days. Now, I was reading on your Facebook page that you're going to be involved in something called the Cowanesque Rock and Blues Festival. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Cowanesque Rock and Blues Festival. Yeah, that's something myself and my buddy Houston Baker, who also plays in a band called HB3 and his own solo project,
okay,
came up with. We wanted to do our own festival toward the end of the summer and get some bands that kind of, in our region there's some metal festivals, and then there's some bluegrass festivals, and there's even a handful of blues festivals that are kind of catering towards, what I would call like the pure blues stuff, the lighter stuff, and
okay.
We wanted something that was more, for the rock fans, the blues fans alike, and, we're into, 60s and 70s music, modern music, and, all that stuff kind of put together, and we have a handful of bands, and it's going to be a great all-day festival, and we're doing that Labor Day weekend on September 5th.
And how did you go about finding the other bands that you were going to have on the bill with you? I mean, was there a process as far as the bands trying to, submit, to...
Well, we had actually talked to and kind of knew of Dustin Douglas and the Electric Gentleman out of Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area. His stuff is really great guy. He was already kind of on my radar, and so they would team up and do some stuff. So we were talking about teaming up to do some stuff, and I said, hey, you want to do this festival, and he was certainly on it. And we knew about Miss Melanie out of State College because Houston had done some shows with her and her band, and he told me, he's been telling me about her for years, and you got to hear this woman sing, man. Like every time I see somebody walk in the room and their jaws on the floor, they can't believe, the vocal power. So it was kind of like some area talent that we knew kind of needed to all be in the same place. And, so it came together very quickly and very easily.
And is that the first time you've ever put something like this together as far as, kind of your own little festival?
As in this genre, yes.
Wow.
Rock festivals, years ago, my old band, Backstreet Law, used to do rock festivals up here around the Wellsboro, Tioga County area called Summerfest. And those were actually, very good.
Yeah.
And the last one we did was, I think there was 1,200 paid or something like that. It was insane. So it's been years since they delved into it, but yeah, we've had a little bit of help with the Academy Corners Blues Committee, which is based out of Knoxville, PA. Yeah. And they've done a lot of concert promotion in the past, and so it's a great little thing we're putting together, I think.
And how cool for you, that besides just putting together this festival, kind of, to highlight your own career, you're kind of shining a light on some up and coming talent. That's really great of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the way to go.
And of course, most people know you from your other band, Candlelight Red, which is a little more rock oriented. And I'm assuming that's, the Jeremy Edge project's been going for a few years now, but I assume that's initially kind of why you launched, the Jeremy Edge project, because it's a little more blues oriented, and this is kind of, maybe the other side of, what you do.
Right. Well, I've wanted to do more of a back to my influences type project, or maybe do my own solo stuff for like a long time.
Yeah.
But, I've always been in and out of bands, and, as you know, like the band's kind of a band's kind of a democracy.
Yeah.
And I'm a team player, when I'm in a band situation, I want to write songs, I want to do what's best for the band and, what's most comfortable for the singer. And, you just kind of want to do the best team that you can have at that time.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up and being in bands as a teenager and what I was listening to and what kind of got me into guitar playing. It's always been like the blues guys, the '70s rock guys. The Zeppelin, the Hendrix, the Deep Purple, all of that. That's and I just finally kind of got the chance to do it. And, we had. We put out an EP as Black Star Sunrise, and we had a female vocalist. It's very, very good. But she had some things come up where she was just like, hey, I'm not going to have time to do this anymore. And it kind of that kind of made the writing was kind of on the wall that, it's like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I really got to do it myself,
Oh, yeah, yeah. And so what's the biggest difference between this and Candlelight Red? I mean, obviously it's more of your solo project. You get a little more say probably. And you get to kind of have more of a say in the direction. But are there any rules, like, as far as this? I mean, does it have to be blues-based, or if it's just kind of something you want to do?
Not really. I mean, the thing is, since we did the first album, and now we're working on the second album, folks, a lot of times they'll ask me, it's like, oh, so it's a blues record. I'm like, well, if you listen to it, not really.
Yeah, that's why I asked, yeah.
It's pretty much a rock record,
yeah.
But, I mean, there's a lot of blues in there.
Yeah.
But it's just whatever finds its way into the melting pot. I've always been a big fan of bands that were a melting pot. Like, probably my all-time favorite band was always Led Zeppelin.
Oh, wow.
Even though they had their own signature sound, you go back to those records, there's Celtic music, there's bluegrass, there's funk, there's Middle Eastern music.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that Led Zeppelin stuff, especially go back to the first two albums, I mean, was rooted in the blues, and Muddy Waters and stuff.
Oh, yeah, it was definitely, but, they took that and took it.
And they rocked it up. Yeah.
Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to dress like Muddy Waters, and I'm going to play just like him, and, pretend that, that, we're stuck in a time capsule and that's forever,
Yeah.
And I've always been more of that school of thought of like.
Yeah, it's just funny because I did an interview once with somebody. They tell me how like Led Zeppelin 3 really influenced them, and that album to me sounds a little closer to the blues, and it's not as rock oriented as some of the stuff I grew up on that Led Zeppelin was doing later, like Communication Breakdown, Rock and Roll, Black Dog, and all that. And so it's interesting if you go back to the roots of Led Zeppelin, you listen to the early stuff. It sounds it sounds more bluesy than rock oriented. They get, of course, more heavier as they went on in their career.
Oh yeah, and even within that album, you have things like "That's the Way," which sounds kind of like folk music, and you have "Gallows Pole," which sounds like some medieval jam you'd hear at some Renaissance fair or something. It's still a melting pot, even though there's a couple blues tracks on there. There's also some pretty, and I always said I thought that Communication Breakdown was almost like the first punk or thrash song ever.
Oh yeah. It's just it's amazing, and I've seen that you guys did a cool cover of House of a Rising Sun. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, that was just something, we did. It's interesting. We've kind of gone, against the grain with, we finished our record and put it out right during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And everyone was kind of like, why are you doing that now? Everyone else is, making videos of them playing in their living room on their cell phone.
Yeah.
Like, we put out an album, we put out a music video.
Well, I got to tip my hat to you for that, Jeremy, because like you're saying, over the last year of this pandemic or whatever you want to call it, and the lockdowns and everything, I mean, first of all, bands were kind of put on hold because you couldn't go out there and do any live shows. So I tip my hat to guys like you and bands, that did put out new music during that time, because, if the fans can't go see you live, I kind of dig the bands that did give us some new music during that time,
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was kind of the way to go, looking down the road, instead of looking right now. And it's like you had a false start, and then it's like some gigs got canceled. It's like in the winter we were still kind of locked down again. So over the winter I was like, you know what, we're practicing, a couple times a month. Why don't we just set up like we always do? Bring a video camera, we'll bring a multi-track audio recorder, and we record, like 4 or 5 songs of us doing our thing. And we did that. We did a Crossroads cover. We did a Free cover.
Oh, cool.
And the House of Rising song was just one of those where we kind of, it's something we kind of warm up on, and, instead of doing vocals, it just kind of did it just.
Yeah, because other bands also, they took different routes. Like there's some bands that, right as the pandemic hit, they were getting ready to release a new album. They kind of put their albums on hold until, one such band that did that was like the Dead Daisies. They do their first album with Glenn Hughes. They put that on. It doesn't get released for like a whole year after it's supposed to originally come out, and it's a hit with the fans. So that's good. But it's interesting to hear that you're a Deep Purple fan. I imagine that the mighty Ritchie Blackmore must have been a big influence on you.
Yeah, definitely huge. I mean, in fact, if you listen to there's a song on the album called Indifferent.
Okay.
And it has a little bit of a Middle Eastern vibe, and that solo to that is kind of a little bit of a nod to which is kind of, a minor thing where you're kind of playing as relaxed and as behind the beat as possible, and that to me is Ritchie Blackmore,
Yeah. And I don't know where you fall with Deep Purple, but I'll tell you, you ask anybody, like, if you're a Deep Purple fan, if they say yes, what's your favorite Deep Purple album, you usually get one of two answers, either Time Machine or Burn. That's a tough one for me because, Burn has a special place in my heart because when I first heard that album, I did not realize it was, because I was a little young at the time. I discovered Coverdale later, like when he put out that 87 Whitesnake album, and then come to realize, oh, wait a minute, that's the guy that sang on that Burn album, And when you realize that, Deep Purple was able to go on and have a little bit of success, when Ian Gillan was no longer a band, I'm like, it's amazing, especially Coverdale at that time. He joins Deep Purple when he's only 21 and virtually unknown at that time,
Yeah, I kind of look at that record as kind of like a collaboration thing.
Yeah.
And I think Rick eventually did the smart thing as he formed Rainbow.
Yeah.
Said, hey, this is kind of my thing, because once it was clear that there was going to be
there's friction with
stepping in and stepping out,
Yeah.
But for me, my favorite Deep Purple is like either Made in Japan or actually I like Perfect Strangers. I think when they got back together and did that album,
yeah.
Was just,
and Deep Purple's one of those interesting bands because there's always been friction among the members of the band, but somehow it made for beautiful music. But and Made in Japan, it's interesting because I've heard the guys talk about that album. It was almost like a freak accident. Their record company almost forced them to release it, and they didn't want to really release it, but it became a massive hit for them.
Yeah, that's how I got introduced to Smoke on the Water and Highway Star and like Lazy and that's
and it's amazing. Deep Purple, like their album Fireball. I don't know if you're a big fan of that, but that album turns 50 years old this year. And Deep Purple's my reference point for a lot of things because like when I hear people say, keyboards suck and they don't belong in rock music, I say, well, you look at what John Lord did with Deep Purple, and then you tell me that.
Oh yeah, I mean, this thing is, I think that a lot of that came from the synthesizers of the '80s.
Yeah.
And I think there was a point where it came annoying, but actually the electric piano, the grand piano, and the B3 organ were pretty much a staple from rock from the late '60s all the way through the '70s. And I still think that's what I think of as rock sound. If you're talking about Zeppelin, Deep Purple, even going back to like Steve Winwood, I'm a huge fan of Steve.
Yeah, or even I don't know how big of a Boston fan you were, but Boston from the '70s and '80s, they were pretty big with that.
Tom Schultz access to pipe organ, that's insane.
Oh yeah.
I just to me, there's nothing beats having a guy do a B3 organ and getting it to overdrive just a little bit where it gets a little nasty. I mean, that's rock and roll.
Yeah. So, how far along are you, Jeremy, with the new solo album?
Well, we recorded all of the basic tracks for everything, and I put a stop to the overdubs and vocal tracking because everything opened up, so we booked a bunch of shows. So let's go play. We can always.
Yeah, that's because it's kind of funny. I don't realize if if you realize this, but like I was just kind of I'm always looking for people to interview, and I thought I came across your name, and I'm like, I remember interviewing Jeremy. I haven't talked to him in a while. I'll reach out to him, and then I kid you not, the same day your publicist sent me something about the Jeremy Edge project. He's getting ready to go out and do some live dates. So I set up an interview with him, but I thought, wow, that's kind of a small world. So talk about that, Jeremy, because like you said, like COVID has affected everybody. So what has that been like for you, not being able to go on the road really for the last year until now?
Yeah, no, it's been tough, but like I said, we've just been finding ways to stay busy. I did some shows with the Aussie tribute band.
Oh wow!
Which was great. That was great fun, challenging, but it was great. It was great for my chops, and those were some fun. There were some fun guys to play with. And you just finding ways to keep busy,
Now, see, that's cool because I think myself and a lot of people would be kind of surprised. Oh, I wouldn't think Jeremy Edge would play with like I don't really see him playing with an Aussie tribute type of band, but I think that's cool that it shows your versatility as a guitarist and that you can do more than just one style of music, which I think is cool.
Well, I'm a huge Tony Iommi.
Oh wow!
Which it's odd. People would always ask me, like, "What's your favorite player? Out of all these guitar players, what's your favorite to play?" And I'm like, Tony Iommi, and they're like, "Why?" And I said, "Well, after playing songs, over and over with a billion notes, it's cool to just like play some stuff that has I can concentrate on going, if I pick closer to the bridge, I can get more of his tone and his vibrato, and that's fun. But yeah, I love that stuff. I mean, I grew up on that stuff too. I mean, in my house, my dad was a musician and he was also a radio DJ, so we just had this massive collection of different music.
And I'm sure if you're a Tony Iommi fan, you know the story of how he had the tips of his fingers cut off when he was very,
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's funny, like my dad would tell me about, Django Reinhardt only had 2 fingers, and then Tony has in the interview saying that he was going to give up, and then he read about Django Reinhardt and was like, oh, well, that guy can only play with 2 fingers, and I can surely keep playing. And now full circle, like I never listened to that stuff, and lately I've been on this gypsy swing kick, so I'm like Django Reinhardt is okay, now I'm listening.
But yeah, but it's amazing if you know Iommi's story, because I mean he's credited really with creating that metal sound, because of the way he plays. Because of that, and I mean, some people tell you that Sabbath really kind of maybe the first real metal band if you go back and kind of really look at it. But were you were you equally a fan of Sabbath, not just with Ozzy but with Dio?
I gotta be honest.
Uh-huh.
My first concert my sister took me to as a kid was Black Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio.
Oh, cool!
So that was my first experience. So that was life changing to me. I was just like, I want to be Iommi with 3 Marshall stacks and a Gibson.
Yeah, I love everything Ronnie James Dio did, but I tell you, I think my favorite album of everything he did's got to be Heaven and Hell.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That I like some of the Rainbow stuff.
Yeah.
Like Starstruck and
Man on the Silver Mountain.
Actually, John and Ray and I have covered Man on the Silver Mountain.
Oh wow.
That's cool stuff. It's strange. I mean, that's blues-based rock too.
Oh yeah.
So I'm big on the late '70s stuff. We were just talking about it, like the era where heavy metal, the soundtrack came out with all of that stuff. I'm like, to me that was, everybody says it's like, oh, the mid '80s is when rock had its resurgence and when the best music came back. And I'm like, man, I thought some of the best music came out of the late '70s and 80, 81.
I'm agree. I'd have to agree with you. I mean, the '70s there's a lot of it came from. I mean, you talk about Purple and Zeppelin and even Sabbath, and a lot of those bands. I mean, by 1980, John Bonham is gone. Bon Scott is dead. So AC/DC continues, but Black Sabbath gets Ronnie James Dio. Ozzy leaves. But Led Zeppelin decides, okay, well, we don't want to continue on with Bonham. So that's the point when a lot of bands were kind of carrying on or deciding what direction to go.
Yeah, a lot of people were like, well, rock is dead. But at the same time, you look at, Foreigner was releasing great records. You had, AC/DC, they got Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
He put out Back in Black, or for those out of the block, There was, Blue Oyster Cult put out Burning for You.
Yeah.
You had Rainbow, Joe Lynn trying to put out Stone Cold. To me, that's some of the greatest stuff, came during that, what I call a sleeper era.
Yeah.
So, I'm a big fan of that stuff, too. I like the modern stuff, too. Like you said, a lot of people know me from Candlelight Red, which is more modern rock. And,
Yeah.
We had, we had 4 songs in the Media Base Top 40. We had, we did the Rockstar Uproar tour. We did a bunch of touring from 2011 to 2013.
Yeah.
And we had the last album we did, Reclamation. Morgan Rose produced and played drums on most of it, and we took quite a hiatus, and I've stayed in touch with those guys, and we actually got together in April and did a 4-song EP.
Yeah, tell us a little bit. I was reading about that. Talk a little bit, because I don't know how new this is, but I seen you guys had a cover of Tears for Fears. Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Great cover. It's kind of not one people would maybe expect that you guys do, but I think you did a cool spin of it.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was just another one of those things where it's like lockdown boredom. My buddy Justin Pacey, who was in the band Digital Summer, we used to tour with. He's up in New Hampshire, and he's like, I got my home studio set up. And I'm like, send me some drum tracks, And so he sent me a drum track to that. I'm like, this is cool, and I'm messing around going. And then I'm going, man, this is hard to sing. So I called Ryan. I'm like, hey, you want to sing this?
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing is we both sang on it, and it was just like a fun little thing to do. So I thought was always a cool tune.
Yeah, and like you said, Candlelight Red's kind of a modern rock band, so I don't think you're going to get too much fluff for doing a Tears for Fears song, if you know what I mean. I think it's one of those bands where you guys could kind of almost do anything, and the fans will accept it,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always think it's like when you're a band, you should always play what you want to play. And
yeah.
It's going to have your signature sound on it. So if they like that sound, then that's what they're going to be into.
I mean, at the same time,
and they're into a scene, or they're into an image, or a style, or something like that. And I've just never been one of those guys, who's like, oh, you're either a goth guy, or you're a metal band,
or
a blues guy. And it's like, I just like to make whatever sounds good to my ear,
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be cool, like, too, if you guys were to, let's say, do a Metallica cover or something like that, but it'd be a little more unexpected, I think. But and so that leads me to my next question. So when you're writing, does it kind of just depend what you're writing for? Like, when you start to writing, do you know right away if it's going to be a song for Candlelight Red or a Jeremy Edge project, or does it kind of depend what you're working on at the time?
I mean, I guess when you're messing around with ideas, you think it's like, oh, this would go well with that.
Yeah.
And then I had a couple ideas and riffs that I thought, well, this is kind of more straightforward rock. This would work really well with Candlelight Red.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, the way this EP came about was during the pandemic. We did like a couple outdoor shows that we kind of, when things were kind of opening up enough, we could do an outdoor show. And I had Ryan come down and do some songs for the Jeremy Edge project, just sit in, and he actually did some blues stuff, did some Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh, wow.
That guy can sing anything. He could sing the phone book, And we got to talking. He said, no, I got like 30 songs in my computer. You know, I don't have any of them finished.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what, we should probably finish some of them and put out some more music. And he goes, yeah, we probably should. So it turned into that, and it turned into we were going to fly Morgan in to try to record in Pennsylvania in December, but there was a big blizzard, so all the flights got grounded. And then we finally rescheduled into April and did it in Illinois.
So what do you think will come out first, the Jeremy Edge CD or the Candlelight Red?
Probably the Candlelight Red EP will probably release first.
Okay.
And then the new album, will probably come out
next year.
Say the beginning of next year.
Oh, cool.
But we may release a single before then. So.
Yeah, and I think too with the Jeremy Edge project, even though it's kind of a blues-based project, being a solo project, you kind of have the freedom that, like you said, it doesn't necessarily always have to be a blues tune. If you want to kind of, do kind of a rock-oriented song, if that's what kind of is getting you off at that particular day, then you could do that as well.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, there's definitely a definite this to it. You know, cause if it's gonna have my name on it, it's like all my favorite stuff. You know.
I hear you, and that's what
compromise is. So it's very like the new stuff is probably gonna be even more 60s and 70s oriented.
Oh, cool! I love that stuff. And I gotta say, Jeremy, you're not only a great guitar player, you're a great singer, but I was kind of curious, what came first, the guitar playing, I'm assuming, you kind of became a singer out of necessity, or did you always know you could kind of sing as well?
No, actually, I actually was under the opinion that I could not sing for years.
But then fans tell you otherwise, huh? Yeah.
Well, we started writing songs for this album.
Yeah.
And, I had actually Brandon from Crowbot sing a couple songs. I had Brett from Dark New Day sing a couple songs. And the day we were supposed to have Brandon come in, I was working on some vocals for some stuff that I wanted him to possibly sing. And he came into it, and him and the engineer Mike kind of listened to it and both looked at me and said, like, why do you want to change this? This is fine. So, it's one of those things out of necessity. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, did you did it take you a while once you made that decision? Okay, I'm going to listen to these guys. I'm going to do the vocals as well. Did it take you a while to get used to hearing your voice? Either when you recorded it or even playing live. I mean, what was that like for the first time? Was it different?
Oh yeah, I absolutely hate everything.
Yeah. Sometimes we're our own worst critic,
It's really hard on myself, so I know that too.
Yeah.
So.
And the reason I ask that is because, again, I think you're a pretty decent singer, and oftentimes, guys I've interviewed over the years, they'll tell me exactly that. Well, I didn't really think of myself as, a singer or a lead singer, but, people tell me, hey, you do, I think you sound good. Why don't you just do the vocal yourself? And a lot of people tell me, also, hey, I wrote the tune, and I really don't think that anybody else could sing the song the way I hear it in my head, or I'd maybe be more critical if I had some other guy come in and do it,
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of people have told me to do is, like, you may have, like, some guy who's, can sing like Miles Kennedy or whatever, but if it's your song and you wrote it, nobody's going to be able to sing it with the same conviction that you can, Say, for example,
I mean, probably one example I can think of that kind of goes the other way is, I don't know if you're at all a Kiss fan, but they have this song called God of Thunder, and the bass player, he also is a lead singer, and he there's two guys that usually sing, Paul Stanley or Gene Simmons, and Paul Stanley happened to write the tune, but the producer thought, you know what, that's more of a Gene tune, and that's kind of what he became known as. Fans started calling him the God of Thunder because of a song his bandmate wrote. It's kind of funny.
I heard that story. That's probably interesting. Paul was probably like, I'm supposed to be a God of Thunder.
Yeah, in fact, he's like, well, I wrote my song, but Bob Ezrin, he's one of those, legendary producers, and if you're all an Alice Cooper fan, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, Ezrin's one of those producers. Yeah. He's really got an ear for things.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so when do you think the Candlelight Red release might come out? like later this year?
Yeah, because we got it done. We're like, okay, we got to send it to the engineers to mix it and master it, and get it to the art guys, and then get it to the label guys. And then it kind of dawned on us, like, everything opened up and everything's kind of happening at once. And the guy that's mixing our single was actually recording a band for a month, so straight. So it's not even mixed yet. So.
Okay. And final question for you. So have you guys played your first show, your first COVID-19, post-lockdown show yet?
As Candlelight Red.
Oh, okay. How about the Jeremy Edge project? You guys haven't played your first live date in probably over a year, right?
Well, yeah, we started playing, I want to say the first day was in May.
Okay, so what was that like after almost a whole year of not playing live? That had to be like a comeback, or I don't know.
That was great. It was great to play some of these songs for the first time live. Yeah. It's funny that we wrote the song Fire Dancer and attended someone else to sing it, and then I had to figure out, wow, this is a really hard song to sing and play guitar.
Yeah.
So I had to learn that, so it was cool to actually go out and actually play some of these songs live, and being that, the band under my name and just the three of us is fairly new. The shows we've done so far have been amazing. I can't believe how fast it's growing.
Yeah.
You always figure when no matter what you've done in the past, if you do something new, it's like, okay, we're gonna go to the bar and play, and there might be the bartender and 5 people there.
You just really never know,
You don't, but we were pleasantly surprised. I think the first show we sold out like half the T-shirts and CDs we brought. So.
I mean, I think it's a little combination of everything. I mean, especially for a lot of fans, they haven't been to a rock show or see a live band in over a year, and so a lot of people just have that edge to get out of the house,
Absolutely.
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.